Well, good morning, everyone. It is a special Monday edition of the Dattitude Podcast live here on all of our NOLA.com platforms. I'm Jim Derry along with Jeff Duncan, and it is game day, boys and girls. Ravens and Saints tonight in the Caesars Superdome. It should be an interesting one, and we're going to spend most of our day talking about Ravens Saints and previewing it, and we'll give our predictions a little bit later on. But, Dunk, I want to start off with one of the most just incredible, I don't even know how to put it. It's just incredible games of the year in college football, and it involved the LSU Tigers in a stunning 32-31 victory over Alabama. I thought it would be a close game. I thought LSU would lose. I thought they wouldn't cover. I thought they wouldn't be in it. And once again, Brian Kelly and Jaden Daniels just was outstanding, and the game plan was phenomenal. And Dunk, I tell you what, this LSU team is way ahead of schedule.
Yeah, that was pretty epic theater on Saturday night. That'll be one of those games that people will remember forever. It was easily one of the best games I've ever seen. And just the way LSU won it in overtime, having the gumption to go for two there. Brian Kelly, certainly, if anybody was on the fence about the Brian Kelly hire, I think he got those people off the fence with that call, and what a great environment and atmosphere. I mean, it's really what makes Tigers Stadium so special.
And the massive improvement of Jaden Daniels from week one to now is, I don't know how else to put it, but I used the word stunning already. You can use it whatever word, improbable, stunning. No one could have predicted that this kid could improve this much in this short period of time. I thought he was the right quarterback for this team, but the way he has improved, even since the Tennessee game, really. But you have seen steady improvement in this kid, and it is immense. It's wonderful to see.
Well, when he transferred to LSU, I talked to some of my colleagues, like national college football writers, and they told me this guy's going to be really good. I remember them telling me that he's going to start. And, I know there was a crowded quarterback room at the time. They said, don't worry, he'll be the guy there. And they were right. And there were some bumps in the road early. I remember my first column of the year on LSU was after the Florida State game. And I said, people need to be patient because he's going to get there. You could just see the talent, but we don't have a lot of patience in this day and age anymore. It's a microwave society. So it's great to see him play with the confidence. You can see it the way he carries himself. He's playing with great confidence, and credit also to Brian Kelly and his staff, because they've obviously figured out what he's comfortable doing, what he's good at doing, and they've tailored the game plan to that.
There's no question about it. And, again, we're going to talk mostly about Saints this afternoon. I've been up for a while. So, I guess maybe in a way it is. I'm still not used to the time change. It's weird. But we are going to talk mostly about Saints today. But I do want to run a small, short clip about Brian Kelly, and he talks about the two-point conversion decision, and I think it encapsulates that. Everyone's talking about how it took guts to run that two-point conversion. I'm not taking anything away from Brian Kelly. Again, I think he's the right coach and the right person, but I don't think it took guts. I think it was the only call to make, and he talks about it here. Let's listen to it.
For me, just to see them grow, this was the next stage in development of our football team, and that they needed to just not think about outcome and think about one play at a time, get to the next play, focus, refocus, and that was the charge all week. Many people had talked about not getting off to a good start and all those things. How do you change that? And so we're talking so much more about just locking in mentally on one play at a time. Don't think about the scoreboard. And I thought they did a great job. The second thing that I'd like to bring up is the crowd was unbelievable. They created an energy unlike one that I can remember that was sustainable for our football team. That was truly a home field advantage for us. And then I thought tactically we played smart, the last thing. We were able to pin Alabama poor field position mostly the first half, made it difficult for them. And I thought we just played smart. We didn't turn the football over. We had the one play where we came out of coverage late. Other than that, I think our guys played really smart football. So, the basic tenets of winning games like this is one play at a time, play tactically smart, take care of the football. I thought we did all those things and really grew up today. So,
Coach, the thinking on the 2-point conversion, when you got the ball, were you saying we're going to take it and if you score, we're going to go for it, or was it a decision at that moment?
It was a decision at that moment. I just felt as I thought about it, if we could boil this game down to one play and win this game before the game started, if you asked me, hey, I'm going to give you one play, and if you're successful on that one play, you beat Alabama, I would have taken that 100 times out of 100. And so at that moment, it kind of hit me that way. And I knew we had a really good play that we hadn't used and they hadn't seen. And when you get 5 out on the perimeter, you truly have a threat. And so I felt really good about the play, and it was well executed, and that was the thought behind it.
Like you said, Dunk, one play to beat Alabama, you take it 10 times out of 10, at least in where the LSU Tigers are right now. I thought it was a no-brainer. And I'm a conservative guy. I'm not a guy that likes to go for too often. You're at home 9 times out of 10. I'm going to probably say kick the extra point and win it in overtime. But that defense was gassed. They had a chance to go, and I thought they had a much better chance to get the 2-point conversion than to beat them by going on in overtime, another overtime.
Yeah, when I saw them trot out their offense on the field for that, I told my friend next to me, I said, he's got a play he really likes. You only go for it unless you got something there that you think is going to be very successful. And I've heard Sean Payton talk about that all the time. Having you keep one in your back pocket just for that kind of occasion. And he alluded to that. And look, Brian Kelly, you have to just be impressed with just the way he's run this program. I mean, you can see he's like a CEO. He got his finger on the pulse of all facets of the football operation, and it's showing. There's a lot of new moving parts there with coaches, and just think how far away they were in January to where they're at now, how far they've come. I mean, it's really amazing. I mean, this team, I remember being at the Superdome for the Florida State game and seeing, I think it was 12 or 13 transfer portal players in the 2-deep roster for LSU, first either starting or backups. I mean, that was amazing to me that their program had gotten that far down, and to pull all this together in such a short period of time, it's really been one of the great coaching jobs I've seen. And there's no question he's got to be the front runner right now for the SEC Coach of the Year, and maybe even the National Coach of the Year.
I mean, I guess you could talk about Josh Heupel, but I think everyone expected maybe not to be this good, but I think everyone expected Tennessee to be top 10 good. The fact that LSU is now number 7 in the country in the AP poll and is about to move up to probably 6 or 7 in the college football playoff poll, I would have told you we're nuts 6, 7, 8 weeks ago. I mean, out of your mind. I think anybody with any besides the LSU crazies would have told you that you were nuts if you thought that. So where they are, it's just absolutely outstanding, and our hats go off to them. And nothing to take away from Tulane Tulsa, but we got a jam-packed show. Congrats to the Tulane Green Wave as well. They move up in the AP rankings. I think they were 16th, 17th, somewhere around there in the AP poll. And congratulations to the Wave. Again, we've got to spend a lot of time this morning. We welcome your comments, by the way, as Rose Marie says, on to Arkansas, beat the Pigs. A lot of fans out there, and we appreciate your comments and questions. Priscilla says, good on LSU. You're welcome to ask any comments you want, ask any questions of Dunk or I that you want. We'll put them on the air here, and we'll talk about them. We're going to run till about 10 o'clock this morning, and we want to jump to the big news of the day anyway. We want to talk about Ravens Saints. And, Dunk, before we get to Ravens Saints, I want to talk about the weird day in the NFL yesterday. We had, I think, 3 20-17 scores. Four 20-17 scores, including last night's game, Kansas City against Tennessee. The one that shocks me the most, I guess, is Bills Jets. I mean, even though I said in my column, I had one of those, it was one of those heebie-jeebie games. I predicted the Bills to win by 3. I thought the Jets had a chance, and I just didn't have the gumption to pick them because I guess I really didn't expect the Bills to play as poorly as they did. But the Jets, I mean, they're playing outstanding defense. It was a weird day in the NFL yesterday.
Yeah, it's kind of been a weird season. That's what my column was about in the paper this morning, was how it's really been a silly season. I mean, who would have thought that the Packers would be, what
They're terrible.
2-6 now. They're terrible.
I think they're 3-6, but they're terrible.
3-6, and that I watched that Rams-Bucks game, and if you would have thought that
both of those teams are terrible.
Right. In preseason, you looked at that game and said, that's a marquee game. That's 2 big-time teams going to be, NFC playoff contenders. And I watched that game and I said, the Saints are going to beat both these teams. There's no doubt in my mind. They're both struggling. So it's just been a crazy season. And one thing I think I haven't seen too much, written about this or even discussed about this, but I really think there was a wave of new young offensive coordinator type head coaches that came in the league a few years ago from the Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay tree. A lot of them got hired. There's a lot of them around the league. And I think for a while there, that scheme was really kind of ahead of the NFL defense. Yeah. And I think the defenses have caught up. I mean, their scores are low across the league. It's difficult to score touchdowns. And we're seeing, I think, some of the lowest scoring NFL games in a long time. And I think that's because these defenses have gotten so good.
Here's why I think, and I've said this from day one, and I don't care how well Buffalo's played. This is why I think that one of the favorites is not, it's going to be a weird year. It's been a weird year already. I think some team that we're not talking about really is going to win the Super Bowl this year. I don't think it's going to be Buffalo. I don't think it's going to be Kansas City. I think it's going to be some weird team because to me, you talk about all the things that are going on. I think you got to be able to run the football to win this year. And you talk about Buffalo and Kansas City, but other than their quarterbacks, they can't really run the football all that much. And I just don't. You can't get away from the running game. And the reason why Tennessee had a chance last night is because of Derrick Henry. Yep. They showed they had maybe the worst quarterback play I've seen of any team this entire year, except maybe with the exception of some things going on in Carolina. That Malik Willis is not going to be an NFL quarterback. I know it's only 2 games in his career. He's not an NFL quarterback. With the fact that they were able to hang in there and be leading deep into the fourth quarter shows you if you have a running game and you have a solid defense, you can win no matter who you're playing.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think tonight's game will be both 2 teams that can run the ball very well. And I think that's going to be a key to that game tonight. But you see around the league now with more teams going to a dual threat quarterbacks. I mean, look at what Chicago's doing. Chicago figured out a few weeks ago that, Justin Fields is still developing as a passing quarterback. So they just started to run they're just running him. I mean, he ran for an NFL record yesterday. So they've been competitive because they can run the ball. The Bears don't have, they've traded away 2 or 3 of their best players and they're still competing with teams. So I agree with you. I think we've kind of gotten to old school football. I know last year Bill Belichick talked about that. Sometimes you got to, zig while the rest of the league's zagging. I think that's true in this case. I could see this being a year like that 15 season where Carolina dominated the whole year. I think the MVP went to Cam Newton. They lost 1 game, and then they got through the tough NFC playoffs and got in the Super Bowl and got beat by the Broncos, who were a big underdog in that game. I could see that happening with an NFC team this year where
I agree.
AFC is going to be such a gauntlet that whoever survives it might not have anything left in the tank for the Super Bowl, and I could see an upset happening.
That's why I like the San Francisco 49ers. Christian McCaffrey changes that team immensely with that defense. And the Saints are going to play the 49ers in a few weeks. It's coming up. That is not going to be an easy game for the Saints. We'll talk about that coming up. But you talk about old school and new school. Tonight is going to be kind of that kind of game, old school versus new school. And the Saints, the line has dropped significantly. The sharps are all over the Saints tonight. We'll talk about our predictions later on in the show. But a week ago at this time, the Saints were 3-point underdogs. It went down to 2.5. It stayed 2.5 most of the week. It went to 2 on Saturday. And then last night, and I didn't check it this morning, I should have. But last night, when I was doing my trends column, after I finished my trends column, it dropped to 1.5. So the big money is on the Saints tonight, and a lot of it, Dunk, has to do with the fact that the Ravens have some key injuries, and one of them being Mark Andrews, their all-pro tight end, and also Gus Edwards, their running back, who they just got. I mean, so it's going to be their offense it's going to have to be Lamar Jackson for Baltimore and the Saints, but the Saints have their own injuries as well. If Lamar can find somebody to throw to, that's what the key is going to be.
No, I know we talked earlier this week about how this game's going to be played. I think it's going to be a physical, run the ball, do not turn it over. I mean, it might go over, but it's going to be tough for me to see how Baltimore is going to consistently move the ball. I mean, they're going to be missing their best running back, their best tight end, and their best receiver in this game.
They still have the best, and you can talk about Michael Vick and Randall Cunningham, whoever you want. They still have the greatest dual threat mobile quarterback to me in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, no doubt. And the Saints defense, though, should be inspired. Last week, I mean, look, they're honoring the Dome Patrol tonight. Sam Mills and his family's going to be there, so it's going to be great. Going to be a great atmosphere tonight. I mean, they're bringing back all the Hall of Famers, Jim. All the Saints Hall of Famers in one spot. First time I think that's ever happened in New Orleans. So Morton Anderson, Ricky Jackson, and Willie Rofe will be there as well. They're bringing Vic Fangio and Jim Moore in. So if you can't get inspired on the Monday night stage going against Lamar Jackson, I don't know what this defense will need. I think they're going to really bring their A game again. And I just think it's going to be difficult for Baltimore to move the ball consistently. I like the Saints tonight, but they've got to control him. They've got to run to the football. I mean, way they played against the Raiders is how they have to play in this game with energy, effort, and enthusiasm. I just can't believe they won't be considering everything going into this game in prime time.
Jim Derry and Jeff Duncan here on Monday morning. We are taking your comments and questions. Also, if you want to give your prediction, you're more than welcome to do that. We'll show that on the air when we get to the point of the show when we're going to give predictions. We're going to run until about 10 a.m. this morning. It is a special Monday edition of the Dattitude. Well, it's not we run every Monday, but Dunk and I usually aren't live on Monday morning. So that's special about it. And there will be a special Tuesday Dattitude. It will not be live. It'll be wherever you find your podcast. You can go search for Dattitude. Tomorrow I'll have my Derry's Dime tomorrow morning after the Saints, hopefully for most of you, beat the Baltimore Ravens. We'll talk more about that. To your point, Dunk, about the lower scoring game, this over-under total has dropped significantly as well, along with the spread. The spread has dropped a 1.5, so is the over-under, going down to 46.5, and a lot of that has to do, obviously, with the weapons that Baltimore doesn't have. And it's not just Mark Andrews and Gus Edwards. I mean, Rashad Perryman is out for the rest of the season. And so, he's going to have to look to Devin Duvernay and whoever else he can find to throw the football to. The Saints are without Marshawn Lattimore, and they're going to have to figure out who's going to cover. But you were talking last Friday, about how Alontae Taylor has really stepped up and improved, and they're going to be counting on Paulson Adebo as well.
Yeah, and I don't know if we'll see the debut of Deshaun Jackson tonight for Baltimore or not. I know they picked him up a few weeks ago. He was inactive against the Bucs.
What's he, like 48?
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I'm just saying, like, they need help at receiver right now. This is a team, if you're going to be missing Marshawn Lattimore again, this is a team you can probably get by with it because they're not a strong receiving core at all. The strength of their team is their tight ends. Without Andrews, who's by far Lamar Jackson's number one target. Without him, they still got good receivers at tight end. I mean, Isaiah Lively is
he's a good young tight end. Very
right, big time guy, and so they'll move the chain. This is going to be kind of one of those old school games. I think every once in a while they'll take a shot downfield. You mentioned Devin Duvernay. I mean, that's a big key to this game. I think is special teams. Harbaugh, his background was in special teams. He was a coordinator for a long time, and they are always good on teams. Duvernay is one of the top return men in the league, and then they also have a Hall of Fame kicker in Justin Tucker. So to me, that's an area the Saints have kind of struggled in, surprisingly, this year. Will Lutz is I think the Saints are 30th right now in the 32 teams in field goal kicking. That's something that's going to have to improve, especially in a game like this. They could come down to a last-second field goal.
Well, and then nobody wants to hear about your fantasy team department. I need Will Lutz to score 5 points tonight for me to win my big league. So nobody cares, but I do. So
I like that. I like your chances. I like your chances there.
All right. Some interesting notes. Run my trends column every Sunday morning. I put more info than anyone could possibly want to know in my trends column. I have what the uniforms are going to be, who the referee is, just trends on each team, and then the quarterbacks and their series history against one another. A couple trends I want to talk about this morning with you and get your take on. Saints are looking for back-to-back wins. They haven't done it all season long. You know the last time that the Saints have gone this deep into a season without winning back-to-back games?
No, that's a good one. It has to have been a long time. When was that?
2008.
Wow.
08 was the last time they've been this deep into a season. They won their 10th and 11th games of 2008 on the way to an 8-8 finish. So 08 was kind of like a lot like this season is. And Dunc, to me, for the Saints I get that the division stinks. But to me, you got a game that you can win tonight because you're playing a team that's good. I don't think they're great. I think they're good. I think they're a little overrated, but they're banged up. So you got to take advantage of that. Next week, you go on the road and play a team that you're going to be a field goal favorite in Pittsburgh, a team that's having its issues. They're young. Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the NFL, but they're struggling. And then talking about struggling, you're playing a Rams team at home. So to me, this is where there's no more chances. You've got to make a run here. I think you got to win at least 2 of 3 and really maybe 3 of 3 because you're playing a really, really tough back end of this schedule.
Agreed. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. These next 3 games are all winnable. I think if the Saints go 2-1 in those games, they're right in this thing. I don't see sustained success for any of the other teams in the NFC South. I think the Saints right now should be the favorite to win the division.
I agree.
But they've got to take care of business. And tonight's a real opportunity for them. I wouldn't like them at all if this game were being played in Baltimore. But here at home, I know the Saints have not played that well. I think they're going to have a great atmosphere tonight. And I think this could be a home field advantage for them. And I think they can get some turnovers in this game from Lamar Jackson. He's not afraid to stick it in there. He's got an incredibly strong arm, but he can make some mistakes in the passing game if they can win first and second down. It's all going to come down to how well they defend that RPO game. They've struggled against that in the past, and we've seen their history against the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. But I think having that extra time to prepare for that this week and the way the Saints linebackers have been playing, I like their chances to kind of control that running game. And if nothing else, limit the explosive plays. And I think that's going to be the key tonight is if you can just continue to kind of make them grind out long drives. I don't know if Ravens can consistently execute offensively to put up enough points to beat the Saints. I did notice this though, JD. I looked at the Baltimore Sun this morning. I guess we're all guilty of this, but they had their stat predictions for the game, and I think of the 9 people, like 7 picked the Ravens, 2 picked the Saints, but it was every one of them picked a close game, just sort of like what we think it's going to be. Probably a very nail biter going down to the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it's not a close game. I think it's set up for that way. But to go to your point again about playing at home, I mean, I don't think the fans can realize this right now because they're not thinking ahead about schedule and where they've been. But this is the 4th out of 5 home games, and the Saints only have 8. The rest of the NFC has 9 home games. The Saints only have 8 because they had one of their home games was put in London. So after this game, they do have another home game in 2 weeks against the Rams, but they only have 3 home games the rest of the season. Rams, Falcons, and Panthers. That's it. So, I mean, you got to take care of business at home. The Saints have not, but they now have a chance to have a winning record at home. If they can win tonight, they can go to 3-2 in the Dome, which you have to have a winning record at home. I mean, last year proved that they weren't able to get things done at home, which was not a Sean Payton staple at all. So tonight is extra big.
And, look, Brian Kelly just alluded to the home field advantage that LSU had on Saturday night. I think the Saints will have that to some degree tonight. There was a great crowd for the Raiders game. Obviously, the Raiders are really struggling. I mean, they've lost 3 games they had 17-point leads in. That's unbelievable. It's the first time that's ever happened, I think, this quickly into a season for a team. So that game, I think tonight will be a much more of a gauge for Dennis Allen and his staff. I kind of agree with you. I think the Ravens are beatable, but they're still extremely well coached, and they know exactly who they are.
Yeah.
And so, the Saints aren't going to go in there and, be gifted a bunch of easy points. It's just not going to happen in this game unless Lamar Jackson throws some picks. But he will also – the other thing that he does is he will fumble. I mean, he runs the ball so much. He's not a very big guy, and he carries the ball loosely. Now, just catching up to him to get to the ball is difficult. But if you can get to him, you can get that ball out. So I think they've got a chance to turn the ball over a little bit on the Ravens because they lead so much. And especially tonight with all of his weapons out, I think he's going to be trying to maybe play a little too much hero ball, and that can get him into trouble.
I was trying to look for trends to see how the Ravens did before their bye week because they're off next week, and to see if there would be an advantage or disadvantage. And there's really not. The Ravens under Harbaugh are 7-7 the week before their bye week. Saints don't have their bye week till week 14, so they still have quite a few games left before they get to their bye. That's, by the way, just an opinion, but that's a ridiculously absurd late bye week. That should not happen. We can talk about that in another show. But I think, honestly, I think they ought to find a way. And I know they wouldn't want to take a whole week off, but I think it would be fair to have you get to the midway point of the season and everybody has their bye the same week. And I don't see why you don't do that. I think it would make for more compelling football that way. But and have 16 games a week every week. But that's probably not going to happen. Interesting note about tonight. Now, I like to – when I do my analysis on my picks, and for those of you who know, I'm not listening to my best bets. I mean, okay, I got to take a chance to toot my own horn because you don't have a lot of chances like this when you're picking games. I'm now 32-13 in my best bets for the year in the NFL, and that's
amazing.
That's against the spread. I mean, I went 4-1 for the second straight week, and I spend a lot more time with my analysis, but I also spend a lot of time often looking at who the referee is going to be. And last week we had a referee in Scott Novak that doesn't call a lot of penalties. And I think that helps the Saints. I mean, not just because obviously you don't want a lot of penalties called, but I'm talking about a game whether the Saints are better off if there's 4 penalties on both teams as they are if there's 10 penalties on both teams. And tonight they have a referee tonight in Brad Rogers that calls a lot more penalties than Scott Novak. So that could come into play. The interesting thing about it is this season, and I didn't go back beyond this season. He's only been a referee since 2019. The Ravens this is only the second time the Ravens will ever play with Brad Rogers as the head referee. They lost last year 24-22 to the Browns. The Saints are their Saints are 1-2 when he calls games. He called the Dallas game last year that the Saints lost in the Dome on a Thursday night. But his crews have called an average of 8 penalties per game on the visiting team for an average of 70 yards a game. And he's called an average of 5.6 on the home team, which I find kind of strange.
Yeah. That's a big disparity.
It's a huge disparity. And when I was doing it last week, Novak, it was almost the exact same number for both teams. There was low numbers. It was in the neighborhood of like 4 point something. So I don't know if that's an advantage of the Saints or not, but the fact that he calls, that's still quite a few penalties. An average of 14 penalties a game is a lot in an NFL game. So the Saints going to have to be careful along that front line and be careful in the defensive backfield.
Well, I think that's the key always for the Saints is do they let them get away with physical contact in the secondary? Because that's just the way the Saints are coached to play. It's been part of Dennis Allen's scheme ever since he's been here. They're very handsy. They get away with a lot. And when they play an officiating crew that is sticklers on that, they struggle. They get called for. I think they lead the league in defensive holding right now. That's not by accident. That's not a conspiracy. That's the way the Saints play. But more often than not, it pays off for them because they're able to reroute and really play sticky coverage. And it'll be – I don't think it's going to be a big issue tonight because I don't see Baltimore using the receivers that much. I think they're going to be a tight end, Lamar Jackson type of game. And then every once in a while they'll take a shot downfield. But I like the way Alontae Taylor – we talked about that. I like the way he stepped up. He's going to have to step up again tonight. but there's no reason to think he won't. I mean, this kid's playing very hungry right now. And on the other side of the ball, JD, I would say look for the Saints to kind of pick on their secondary. I mean, Baltimore's, I think they're like 25th or 26th in the league in pass defense. So you can throw the ball. Yeah, you can throw the ball on them. And so I think there's an opportunity there to get pick on their. I think they've got a rookie nickelback named Williams, Damarian Williams, who a lot of teams pick on. I mean, he's a 4th-round draft pick starting out there. That's a guy that I think between their 2 starting corners, Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey, are solid, but you can get after them at the nickelback position.
Yeah, we talked on Friday, and I showed this graphic, and I know you think that the Saints are going to try to – I mean, they have to establish the run. There's no question they have to try. But when you look at this graphic, I mean, Saints fans know what I think about this, anyone who's listened to me. But I think a lot of this, the chances of victory tonight are going to be on the shoulders of Andy Dalton, because I think they're going to have a much tougher time to run the football this week. You see that the Russian defense, they're 5th in the NFL in Russian defense, and the Saints have done well. Alvin Kamara finally got in the end zone. He did it 3 times last week. That's not going to happen this week. Alvin Kamara is not going to score 3 times tonight. No. So a lot. I'm not saying Andy Dalton has to be perfect, but he has to have one of his better games for the Saints to win tonight.
Yeah, I think it'll come down to that. I mean, this game, as most NFL games, will come down to, especially when they're 2 very closely matched teams, sometimes it can come down to somebody making a big play at the quarterback position. That's what the Ravens rely on Lamar Jackson for. But I agree with you. The Saints still have to stick to the running game, but this could be a big game for Taysom Hill. I could see him being more effective tonight than Alvin Kamara. And I like the way the Saints ran the ball against the Raiders. I think getting Andres Pete back helped a lot. That offensive line has really kind of solidified itself. And another underestimated factor, people don't recognize this, but Adam Troutman's going to play tonight, and he's big time in their Saints running game. He's their best blocking tight end, and I think having him back certainly helps that quarterback power play that the Saints like to run with Taysom Hill. When they get down the red zone, we know Taysom Hill is going to come into the game. That's been a big key to the Saints' success in scoring touchdowns. They're one of the best in the league in red zone offense, and that's been a struggle for the Ravens. So that's an area that I think the Saints, if they can get down, and the few times they get down there, punching in for 7 as opposed to 3, I think that could be the difference in them winning this game.
We have about 10 or 15 minutes left in our live show here on Dattitude. Jeff Duncan and Jim Derry on a special Monday edition of the podcast here. So if you want to get your prediction in, now is the time. We'll be giving ours in just a few minutes. And Duncan and I will both be in the Dome tonight. In fact, we'll be tweeting out during the game. And I know I'm going to be on the @bet_NOLA Twitter feed. If you haven't followed us on Twitter yet, now's your chance, because we give a lot of good information out during the game, including live lines and maybe some analysis and maybe a prediction or 2 or things that we think might happen. Just some cool stuff @bet_NOLA. I am at Jim Derry Jr. Jeff is at Jeff_Duncan. So if you want to follow us during the game tonight, you're more than welcome. We got a lot of comments about Let's Go Saints. I know there's a lot of Saints fans out there. But I'd like to see predictions other than the Saints are going to win 50-0. That's not going to happen. We appreciate those. But all right, Lindsay wants to know, will the Saints make it to the playoffs? Dunk, the only chance they really have at this point is to win this division, which they certainly are capable of doing. I think a lot rides on tonight's game. Even though it's only week 9.
Well, if you look at the schedule the rest of the way, it's pretty user-friendly. I mean, the only team with a winning record the rest of the way is the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I think San Francisco is going to be certainly a challenge and certainly will be a winning record. But those are the 2 big games the rest of the way.
And Cleveland with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and Deshaun Watson will be back, and that's a Christmas Eve game,
in
unfamiliar
Cleveland.
Opponent. That's always a tough game.
All 3 of those games on the road, by the way.
I know. Yeah, all of them on the road. Saints have been a good road team, but I think tonight's game, if they can get tonight, and I think they will win, I really do. I know we'll get to predictions later, but I think this team can go on a little run here and get back to 500. And once they get to 500 in this division, I think it's going to be one of those years where we're going to have a 500 team win the division. Maybe that's what my column was about this week, Jim, was like, we always talk in New Orleans about, the gods are against us and we're cursed and all the bad luck. And remember that year in 2010, the beast mode year, when the Saints had to go on the road and play a 7-9 division champion, even though they had a much better record than them and got trucked by Marshawn Lynch and the Seahawks. It could flip around this year, and the Saints could end up getting a home game with a very similar record, I think. So sometimes these things do eventually even out.
There's no question. I mean, it's 8-9 is the bare minimum, but I still think it's going to take 9 and 8 to win this division. And I think that if the Saints do win tonight and get to 4 and 5 with a chance to go get back to 500 next week in Pittsburgh, if they were able to do that, that would give them a ton of momentum. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm definitely not saying it's going to happen because I don't think it's going to happen, to be honest. But if they could, it changes the entire outlook on the season. You forget about everything that's happened so far, the bad things that have happened. All those go out of your mind. If you get to 5 and 5, and frankly, if the Saints win tonight, they're tied for first place with, to me, an average Atlanta team and a below average Tampa Bay team. I don't think Tampa Bay is any good at all. I mean, they have no running game at all. And
they can't run the ball at all.
They can't run the ball, and Tom Brady looks like he's 45 years old. I know they won the game yesterday, and all the talking heads this morning, I can't believe that's the game they're talking about more than anything. That was the lead on every show this morning was Tampa Bay. It's only because they're trying to drive ratings. But to me, who cares? There was 2 really bad football teams yesterday. 2 teams going nowhere.
The Rams.
Go ahead.
Did you see that stat on the Rams? I saw it on social media. They've been outscored 71-10 in the fourth quarter.
I did see that, actually.
I mean, that's
they can't run the football either.
Right. And I've never been, I've always felt like Sean McVay was highly overrated. I think he's a good
he can't
coach.
beat San Francisco.
Right. I just feel like, that game plan he put together when they end up beating the Saints here on the bad call, and then they get in the Super Bowl, and that was one of the worst performances I've ever seen in Super Bowl history.
I agree.
The Rams were completely unprepared. They got outcoached by a very mediocre Patriots team. I just haven't seen enough out of Sean McVay. I think they were fortunate to win the Super Bowl last year. Things just went their way, and they got a Bengals team that wasn't the best team.
Yeah, they play anybody else but the Bengals, and they don't win the Super Bowl.
Right. So and we're seeing it this year. You're talking about having bleak futures. The Rams' future is pretty bleak. They've got a lot of cap issues. They don't have a lot of draft picks, as we know they've traded them all away. Yes, they got a Super Bowl, but I wouldn't want to be part of that future.
Sean McVay's going to retire after this year. I mean, there's been rumors about it. There was rumors that he thought about it before this year, and I think he sees where that team is going, and they're going in the wrong direction, and they're not going to be coming back anytime soon. Matt Stafford is starting to look like an older quarterback as well. It doesn't help that he doesn't have a running game.
They have no offensive line.
No, I mean, they obviously miss Andrew Whitworth more than anyone could have possibly expected, but they are not a good football team, and they're not going in the right direction. They're not going to be good anytime soon. All right, Mike Morrell wants to know, when is Lattimore supposed to be back? I don't know the answer to that. Do you? I don't know if he's going to be anytime soon.
Nobody seems to know. I think it's more serious than people thought.
Yeah.
I think the frustration Saints fans have, and we talked about this about the Mike Thomas situation, is there's just been so much ambiguity about some of their injured stars. You wonder why they – Well, yeah, and the fact that they haven't put guys on the short-term IR, that creates a little more hope, I think, because you're thinking they're going to be back sooner. But we're looking at now coming up on 4 games for Marshawn Lattimore. So
there was no reason not to put him on the IR, right? Right. It goes back to what I was talking about last week when we were talking about Mike Thomas. And, I just don't believe in this medical staff at all. I mean, they have shown to be, I don't want to go as far to say inept, but they have had their issues over the past several years. Sean Payton had a problem with some of the people that were on the medical staff, and I don't think it's gotten any better. And somebody's not getting some right information, because there's absolutely zero reason that Michael Thomas shouldn't have been on the IR 3 or 4 weeks ago. And there's clearly no reason that Marshawn Lattimore shouldn't have been put on the IR. I'm not saying that the first week that he's hurt, but you got to realize at some point he's not coming back anytime soon. There's no reason he shouldn't have been put on IR. And now you wonder about Jarvis Landry. What should he have been put on IR as well?
Right. Yeah, I think Jarvis Landry is going to give it a go tonight. We'll see. But I think he'll be limited certainly in how many snaps he gets. But the Lattimore situation certainly is it's a serious one. I know, he's got some internal issues there. Yeah. But Mike Thomas, I think, is a unique situation because he's such a kind of complicated guy. He doesn't like to have surgery. No one likes to have surgery, but he especially, I don't think he's ever had surgery until that ankle of a year ago.
He's afraid of it, I guess.
Yeah, that's what caused the long-term delay that led to the issue with the team was the fact that he wanted to do a conservative approach to rehab. It didn't take, and they ended up having to have surgery anyway. And I think the same similar situation has happened here with this toe, where, and I think Saints fans wonder, why didn't he go ahead and have the surgery early on? Maybe he could have come back at some point later in the season. And now it's like his thing's played out all over again, the exact same kind of situation with Mike Thomas. So I do think he's a little more of a unique situation because he has his own, as I think I mentioned to you last week, he has his own trainers, he has his own medical staff, his own doctors he goes to. I mean, he's very much kind of a one-off with this team. I mean, he's not like most of the players. I mean, and the fact that they've invested so much in him, their hands are tied a little bit as far as how they deal with him. I mean, I think there were some trust issues between Mike Thomas and the team with the way everything went down last time. So they're kind of dancing around this one with Mike Thomas, trying to keep him on board. And that's probably led to some of the ambiguity with his injury.
I don't want to spend too much time talking about Mike Thomas because we spent a lot of time last week talking about him, and people know how I feel. I think people know how Dunc feels for the most part. There's really not much more to say on him, and today is about game day. So, but I do want to. I swore that we would answer questions that are asked, and so Daryl asked, "Have we seen the last of Mike Thomas with the Saints?" I mean, I don't. At some point, he's going to play with the Saints because no one else is going to want him. I mean, I said we've gone into detail about his contract. So unless he just doesn't play anymore, which I think is probably doubtful, at some point he's going to play. Whether he gets surgery or whatever he's going to do, he's going to have to play, and he's going to have to play for the Saints because they're stuck. No one's going to take him. They're stuck with his contract. So I think that it's probably a 90% chance he suits up again, and I think of that 90% chance, 88% of it is going to be with the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're contractually almost bound to him right now. There's really no way they can move him unless somehow you got another team that was interested in trading for him. Yeah, and agreed to pay some of his contract. I mean, that would be the only way I think it would work. But I know, look, they're not upset at Mike Thomas. I mean, nobody is upset with him. I think the fans are upset with how the whole thing was handled. But, as far as the Saints front office and management, they're fine with him. So I don't think
Sean Payton was.
I think, that was a year ago. But in this instance, I don't think they feel like he did much wrong. And they were all on the same page on this as opposed to last time. So I think the discontent with Mike Thomas is from outside the building more so than inside.
Yeah, could be. Well, we have reached that point in the show where it is time for a Dunc and I's prediction as the Ravens face the Saints once again. The Saints are a 1.5-point underdog, but the big money has clearly been on the Saints as we've gone along. Something we really haven't seen throughout the season. The big money has been against the Saints for most of the season. So this is the first time I've seen a line change this much in the favor of the Saints. So people who know what they're doing are betting on the New Orleans Saints. Duncan, I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, I picked the Saints to win this game outright in the paper. I think it'll be at first I thought it might be a little more high scoring, but with what I've seen with the injuries at Baltimore, I really think that's also contributed to that line moving. I mean, they're really banged up. It's not just those three big offensive stars. They got some other guys who are going to be out. So I like the Saints in a kind of a field goal type game. I think if they can get control early, like they did against the Raiders, that'll go a long way. They don't want to drop behind and have Andy Dalton have to pass them back into contention. So I think Dennis Allen will manage this game with that in mind. I think it'll be very conservative from both coaches, and they're going to see who's going to blink first. And I think the Saints have kind of found their rhythm offensively right now. They know who they are. They're a run-first team, and I just like them tonight in this special environment. I think the home field advantage will carry them to a close win. I think I picked like 26-16 or something like that in the paper. I'll stick with that.
Well, you are very optimistic. You and I are usually on the same page when it comes to predictions. We're rare. I mean, it goes to show, like last year in the Carville contest, I think we were one game apart, and we were both more than 30 games over 500 against the spread, which is amazing in itself. I can't change my prediction. I thought about it yesterday and whether I wanted to change it or not, and I just can't. This is going to be the first time all season. Uncle Big Nick, by the way, we'll get to your question in just a minute. Here's the reason why I don't like the Saints tonight. I think the Ravens are going to win, and I do agree that the home field is going to be huge, probably more important tonight than in any other game. I just keep going back to the fact that this game is going to be rested upon Andy Dalton's shoulders. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no ways around it. Andy Dalton is going to have to have a great game tonight, and because they're going to have to be able to pass the ball. I think he needs to throw for 300 yards and not turn the ball over for the Saints to win tonight. I know the Ravens are banged up on offense, but they know how to stop the run, and I think that the Saints are 1-4. I brought this up the other day. The Saints are 1-4 the past two seasons against teams with quarterbacks who are in the top 10 rushing quarterbacks in the league. And Lamar Jackson is the best of the bunch. Even though they're banged up, I think he's going to rush for 80 or 90 yards tonight. And I just don't like this matchup. I don't like the being on Andy Dalton's shoulders. I didn't realize this until I did my trends column this morning, but Andy Dalton has played the Ravens, and I know they were in the same division, but good God, he's played the Ravens 17 times in his career. He's 7-10 against them, and he's thrown for 4,285 yards against the Ravens in his career. He's only got a 57.2% completion percentage against them. He's thrown 22 touchdowns and 19 interceptions in 17 games. It's not very good. So we'll see what happens. I hope I'm wrong, and I almost changed my pick, but I decided to stick with it, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Great. Saints win. That'd be a wonderful thing. And I actually think it's going to be a higher scoring game. I think there's going to be a lot of playing catch up. But I agree with Duncan the fact that I think it's going to be tight until the fourth quarter. I hope it doesn't come down to Justin Tucker, because let me tell you something. If you don't think Justin Tucker hasn't been looking forward to this game, the first missed extra point of his 7-year career came against the Saints. And not only was it an important kick, it was super key because it was 24-23, 24 seconds left, I believe, in the game. Something Justin Tucker had never done. He missed an extra point, and the Saints won. And don't think he hasn't been thinking about that for 4 years. So if it comes down tonight, he's gonna do it. Campbell says he just needs to play. The defense got to stop the quarterback. I think he's answering Nick's Uncle Big Nick. I tell you when I asked your question, need the best play for DFS. I know, Dunk, you don't get into all that, but that is daily fantasy. And who are the best players for tonight? He said he's got Taysom versus Lamar, who gets more touchdowns.
I like that. I like Taysom. I think Taysom could have a big game tonight. I think he has to have a big game because I think it like you said, they don't need this game to come down to Andy Dalton. I think Taryn Wack on our staff had the story this week about Andy Dalton historically bad in primetime games. I mean, going back to his Bengals days, and we saw he had his worst game of the year this year in Arizona, which was a primetime game. He's just, for whatever reason, has not played well in those games. So if it comes down to having him carry you in a game like this, I think that's a little that's not what the Saints want. They're going to have to get some kind of running game with Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara.
I hope I'm wrong about Andy Dalton tonight. I really do. I've been saying, and I said, you know, I knew the social media genius would come at me last week after Andy Dalton played well. He didn't play great. It was Alvin Kamara that played well. It was more Taysom involved. But the Saints, one thing they did get out of last week is they got their formula right.
Yep.
The defense played as well as they could possibly play. They were geared up for that game. You talked about how there was a different look about them before the game. They need to have that look tonight. Will they? I don't know, but they need to have that look tonight. And you do need a lot of Taysom tonight. Taysom needs to touch the ball at least 12 to 14 times, in my opinion. And they need to have a couple of gadgets. He needs to throw the ball tonight, I believe, as well. Because if it's on Andy Dalton, that's bad news. We'll be able to see. But Uncle Big Nick, also like Isaiah Lively tonight. If you're playing DFS, like Duncan and I were talking about before, I think he's going to play a huge role for the Ravens on the other side. He might get 7 or 8 catches. Certainly going to get a bunch of targets. We'll see how that works out. All right, before we go off the air, and we thank you for joining us, you got about 4 or 5 minutes left before I want to switch gears real quick. Just want to touch on the New Orleans Pelicans, and it's been a weird week for the Pels. 2 heartbreakers this past week against the Lakers and against the Hawks, and I didn't change the date on that Lakers game, by the way. That was last Wednesday, not Friday. But they had no business losing that Lakers game. We talked about it, but then they did the same thing against the Hawks. They really had no business losing to the Hawks either. They had the game won there towards the end and kind of let it slip away once again.
Yeah, I expect them to bounce back against the Pacers tonight, but those were really disappointing losses. The Lakers game in particular, I mean, the Lakers are bad right now. They're
really
2-7. The Pelicans right now, their biggest challenge, among other things, I mean, obviously getting everybody back healthy has been a big boost for them. Now they got to start playing together so they can develop some continuity and figure out the roles with how they're going to play. But more than that, I think it's their mental mindset. To me, you still have too many lapses with this team. They're just not quite there yet. They don't have a killer mindset. And I don't know where that comes from, but they got to develop it because they let too many games slip away. That Lakers game was a prime example. They should have come out and blitzed them early and given them no hope. Instead, they had a dogfight. I saw the same thing. I covered the game Friday night, Jim. I mean, the Warriors didn't start any of their starters. I think they had one starter, but none of their stars, Clay and Steph and Draymond Green, all sat. And you could just tell the Pelicans looked at that lineup and said, well, we can beat these guys whenever we want. And they just kind of cruise control through the game. And as a result, there was like 3 minutes left in the game, and it was basically a one-possession game. It should never happen with the talent disparity. So they've got a ways to go with their mental approach to the game. And I think it's got to come from their 2 young stars, Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. Even though C.J. McCollum is unquestionably one of the leaders of the team, those 2 young guys are the superstars on this team. And one of them needs to kind of develop that I'm taking over the game mindset, and I'm not going to let my teammates cruise through these games. And I'm still waiting for that to happen.
I know it's mostly the same players, but I think Zion being in there, I think they're still trying to figure out it's going to take a while to develop that chemistry back again. CJ McCollum never played with Zion. So I think there's some work to do there. I trust in Willie to get this team together soon, and sooner rather than later. Remember, last year they started out 3-18. So to be 5-4 is not really what you wanted, especially the way they looked in that opener. But I think that this team is going to get it together, but sooner rather than later. And again, in Willie we trust. Before we go off the air, we had one more comment that Lindsay, we love you. We thank you for commenting all this morning. And she says Winston throws interceptions. We don't need that. Andy Dalton has thrown quite a few himself. So let's just, we talk about the safe route. It doesn't matter what I think or even what Dunc thinks in this case. They've obviously committed to Andy Dalton, at least for the near future. But we'll see. Again, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that Andy Dalton can lead this team to the playoff. I hope I sit here in January and with Dunc and tell you that I'm eating crow because Andy Dalton has been good enough to lead this team to 9-8, and they are going to the playoffs. Just don't see it. They need to take a gamble. Doesn't matter, though. We'll find out tonight. I think tonight is going to tell a lot about this Saints team because, again, they have 2 winnable games after this. Tonight is a winnable game. They have got to find a way to play good football. That defense has got to step up like it stepped up against the Raiders.
No, I agree. And look, I think you hit the nail on the head with Andy Dalton. I think this game will come down to, can he get it done? And my concerns with him has been when they've had to have him make a big drive at the end of the game to either win or tie the game. The only really time he came through was against the Vikings, where he got them down for a field goal. But that Bengals game should have been won, and he couldn't make the plays they needed at the end to put that game away. So he's limited. He knows what he is at this stage of his career.
Correct. He's also, that's what I was going to say. He's older too. It's not like this isn't the Andy Dalton from 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Exactly. And so the Saints kind of have to manage their games that way. And as long as he can avoid mistakes, I think they'll be in this game tonight. But he's struggled to do that in these primetime games against the Ravens, as you pointed out with all the stats. So to me, this is a game where there could be a lot of punts and a lot of field position, just trying to avoid losing the game as opposed to trying to win it.
Again, you don't want it to come down to Justin Tucker. I promise you. If it comes down to Justin Tucker, turn the TV off. Just do yourself a favor. Turn the TV off if it comes down to Justin Tucker. All right, well, that is going to about wrap it up. Duncan and I both have to get ready for some action in the Dome tonight. The Bayou Bet Show will be live. Zach and I and Spencer. Zach and I will be either in the Dome or somewhere around the Dome. I don't think we've figured that out yet. But we have a live show this afternoon. All these same channels here on bet.nola.com and nola.com will be live at 4 o'clock this afternoon. More previews on Ravens Saints. I'm probably not going to change my prediction, but maybe I can put a rosier spin on it. I don't know. And hopefully Dunk's right. And, Dunk's been right more than me, I think, when it comes to the Saints this year. But that is going to do it. Final thoughts, Mr. Duncan.
No, looking forward to a great atmosphere. Can't wait to get on the field before the game. And I personally, as a guy that appreciates the history of the game and the nostalgia, I encourage and I've encouraged Saints executives, do more of this retro stuff. Everybody gets a Dome Patrol poster at the game tonight. Wow. That famed Dome Patrol poster that I think every kid in New Orleans had back in the 80s.
What about the media? Do we get it too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of them there for the media. Right. I'll get you one. Actually, you'll get one, I think, tonight in the press box. But I love it because the Saints have great, unique uniforms. They have great logos, great history. I'd like to see them do more of this kind of retro stuff to honor the people that came to this organization before the current iteration. So I'm really fired up for that tonight to see the festivities around the halftime and pregame. Well,
we've had Ricky Jackson and Jim Mora on this show in our brief little one-year history. So maybe we can get Pat Swilling on, and that's at some point in the near future. That would be fun. And but it is always the Dome Patrol. You talk about them, and you talk about Morton Anderson. I know you know Morton fairly well. It's just a wonderful thing, wonderful honor to honor all the old past. And you think about it, a lot of these 30-somethings don't even know these guys really.
I know.
It's kind of amazing.
I think this is the first time, like I said, that all the Saints Hall of Famers will have been together in New Orleans at the same time. I know they all went out to dinner at Impastato's the other night and had a great meal, and all the families are here. So it's going to be really a special environment tonight.
Well, we're going to be there, and we hope you stick with us. Again, after this show is over, the live portion, I'll go add my monologue, and you can listen wherever you get your podcast. If you want to just listen to the monologue portion, or you want to listen back to something you missed, or you want to hear how wrong I am, go for it. We appreciate you following us. Duncan and I will be back next Friday, or this Friday, actually, as we preview the Steelers and Saints game. Saints heading to Pittsburgh this weekend. I'll be on tomorrow morning reviewing this game, and then Thursday it'll be Uncle Big Nick and I as I try to stay hot with the best bets. It's got to come crashing down at some point. I mean, it's not realistic, right? We'll find out. All right. Well, thank you, Jeff Duncan, and we will talk to you later. Everybody, have a great day and enjoy the game tonight. Ravens and Saints. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning.